I'm Aryeh Schwartz, along with my co-host tonight, Rachel Galligan, and welcome to the WNBA Insider Show. Each week we cover different topics important to the W, using X's and O's along with key stats. We bring honest and critical analysis. We're talking WNBA Finals here. Rachel, welcome. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm excited, nervous. don't want game one to come, because I know that means we're at best 4 games away from the end of the season, or I guess 5 games, whatever. You know what I mean? I just don't want this season to end. I mean, it's been a great season. I've had a lot of fun covering pods with you and Pat and others that we've had on the show, and I just want more WNBA basketball year round.
I mean, I'm not blaming you. There are ways to make it year round, but the good news is we are not there yet. We still have at least 3, is just to kind of help you out. At least 3 games left at max 5, and my God, I honestly, this is going to be a hell of a finals. I'm going to tell you that right now.
Yeah, it's going to be intense. DC's going to have to come out very physical. It'll be really interesting to see how Seattle can handle that. I mean, look, both of these teams were in just bloodbaths, in just, heavyweight bouts where headshots, body shots, it was just a ridiculous match for both teams. Even for Seattle, who kind of had, early wins, those were not easy early wins. In the game that Seattle got blown out, I think that was the biggest difference of any of these 2 series is. But I just think, I don't know. All right, let's start it off this way. Give me a prediction, Rachel. Who's winning? No, I'm joking. Don't worry. I was going to hit you with that real quick. I was going to hit you with that. No, I guess, coming into this game, I think the obvious answer is DC, but which team do you think's more bruised, more beat?
Probably DC. Just initially, that's my first reaction because of the obvious. But, both teams have injuries that they're dealing with, key injuries with key players. Deladon, who is not at 100% with her knee. You've got Sue Bird, who's obviously wearing a face mask, which didn't seem to affect her the other night, but still, nonetheless, both injuries that, kind of play a huge part in this. But, in terms of who's more bruised, honestly, realistically, I think Elena is going to be about as great as we can see her. In terms of being as close to 100% as we can see her. Both teams are just playing at such a high level right now. I mean, that's why they're in the finals. So especially that mentality coming into a finals as a competitor, as a player, any sort of tiredness or any sort of injury or things that you might be battling with, in my mind, mentally kind of go out the window. You know what I'm saying? I mean, this is finals time, and both of these teams, they're after that championship.
No one's tapping out. You're having the coach pull you out. There's no stopping here. I expect Deladon to go full force. I expect Sue Bird to give us vintage Sue Bird in the mask. I mean, I want to see more of that Sue Bird who almost got her mask pulled off and freaked out. I want to see more of that. I want to see more Elena Deladon getting pissed off. I want to see if you will, the friendly giants of this league, and it's not a pun for Deladon, but it's a pun for Sue Bird. I want to see them kind of break out of their respectable, nice shell and start the shit talk, if you will. I want to see them go face to face and really battle it out, get into their villain-esque bag of tricks, if you will.
Well, I think we're going to see a little bit of anything and everything, We're going to see moments of sheer greatness out of them. We're going to see moments where, people lull out and other people have to step up. And maybe unsuspecting, characters are going to step up and play key roles. I mean, look at Aryeh Atkins, who has been arguably one of the top 2 rookies of the season so far. And just the level of play that she's been at. Natasha Cloud for DC, kind of that spark plug that makes this team go. And it is glaringly evident when she's not out on the floor with them. And it's just everything that she brings to the table from a leadership standpoint, an energy standpoint. You could go, down the line when it comes to, Seattle, from Jewell Loyd to Stewart to Bird. I mean, they're obviously very first 5 heavy. Washington gets a little bit further into their bench, but I mean, there's so much greatness in this game. There are so many storylines in this game. And I think we're going to see Jordan Canada really thrive in moments where she steps up and hits a big shot. We're going to see greatness. We're going to continue to see greatness from Sue Bird. Obviously Brandon Stewart and Elena Deladon are at times going to throw the team completely on their back. And to what extent, I think is going to be hard to be determined. But this is what it's all about. That the greatest team is going to compete. And if you look at these two teams, you've got, Seattle leads the series 2-1. The first two games, late May, early July, they played at Seattle. With Seattle taking both of those games. Elena Delle Donne did not play in the first matchup. The Storm beat the Mystics 81-77. So a very close game. That was when the period of time when Delle Donne was out. She had some illness going on at that time. And then the next meeting, July 8th, the Storm beat the Mystics 97-91. So again, first two games were by a margin of an average of 5 points. And so these are close competitive games, as you can tell. These are two teams that if you just kind of go down the line, they match up extremely well. And they're like,
Rachel, I want to ask you actually real quick, because it's interesting you brought that up. Looking at the two series that we just saw in the semifinals, Seattle and Phoenix, DC and Atlanta, both of those series, I never really thought that any of the games would be blowouts. Looking at this series, I would not be surprised if we see a game or two that are, a large margin of victory.
I agree with that. And they even just based on what these teams are capable of doing offensively, and their ability to just go completely off. And then the other team to kind of be struggling defensively. And so both of these teams can get going. Both of these teams have serious firepower when it comes to the talent on their rosters, especially when it comes to Seattle. And even in their last meeting, last time these two teams met was in DC. The Mystics routed Seattle 100-77. Delle Donne goes off for 30 points. LaToya Sanders finished with a double-double. So you kind of see it. Just look at the history of their three meetings this season. We had a couple close ones and then a blowout. So I think it's going to be that similar pattern. I think for the most part, say this thing goes to 5 games, 3 of them are probably going to be extremely close, and there might be 2 that kind of, and when I say out of hand, could be, 12 points or more, kind of in terms of just the margin of victory. But I do think it's possible because they've proven that when these teams get hot and they get going and they're feeling it, there's no letting up.
So something interesting I want to bring up is, the Breanna Stewart in these 3 games that they've played, she scores 25, she scores 25, and of course in their loss, she scores 10. So she's going to be a player that I'm going to be keeping my eye out on. When it came down to it, though, both of these series, to me, said how important and how, not underrated because people talk about it all the time, but how important and how undervalued maybe playoff experiences. And I talked about this in the last time we chatted, Rachel. The reason I think the Mystics were able to pull off victory is because of Kristi Tolliver and Elena Delle Donne. Obviously, other players had great games. Atkins had never been in a series like that before, but she had a great game. And then you flip it over, Storm, for them to win, people started to panic and everything was put onto Sue Bird. So I guess in the case of playoff experience, not necessarily most games and stuff like that, but just overall playoff icy veins, if you will, which team do you think has the advantage between the DC Mystics and the Seattle Storm?
It's interesting because as soon as you ask that, my initial reaction is to want to say Seattle. But then you step back and you realize, man, they haven't been in this situation for like 8 years. But I still say Seattle, and that's for one reason, Sue Bird. What she's capable of doing, what she showed us the other night. And I do think, for someone like Breanna Stewart is not just like your average, everyday, great MVP out there. You got to remember Breanna Stewart has played at the highest levels of everything that's entirely possible. Coming from Connecticut, she's used to winning. She's used to being a champion. She is able to, like you said, icy veins. She's got those icy veins, and she can elevate her game to that level where, when players need to step up and make plays, she can do that. And we know that about Breanna Stewart. And ultimately, that's what these these finals come down to. This is what postseason or playoff time is all about, is players going out there and making plays under high pressure situations and elevating their game to that next level. And so we've seen it with Sue Bird. She's been on this stage. She's won championships. She's proven that she can do whatever it takes to go get that win. And I think, just kind of what she did in those last, 5 minutes, 38 seconds of Game 5 against Phoenix. If anything, if she needed help with confidence, she's going to be going into this thing. I mean, I think she's a woman on a mission. She is not going to be denied. We're going to see more of that in these next few games. There's no doubt about it. But it's not to hold anything against Washington, but this is a situation that they've not been in, from top to bottom, the majority of that team. So I think, really both teams across the board are pretty inexperienced, especially Washington just as a franchise. But honestly, how many championships or how many finals has Kristi Tolliver been in? Do you know off the top of your head?
I want to say she's been in 2.
That's what I was thinking, but I'm not sure.
The way we'll look into that, but like the way I look at it is, Elena Delle Donne has been to a finals. She didn't compete in all the games in that finals. So like that, obviously, like she was a starter when she did compete. So she's a little bit higher on that radar than the likes of Natasha Howard. And then you kind of flip it to Sue Bird versus Kristi Tolliver. And I think, when it comes down to it, I don't know if this is rightfully so because Kristi has been there of more recently. But I kind of what you were saying, I go towards Bird. I just think she has that cool, calm, collective attitude that, Tolliver also has. But I just have a little bit more confidence in Sue Bird. So I think it's kind of a wash, to be quite honest. And then you look at offenses, and I think ceiling-wise, I'd say the Storm's offense ceiling-wise is a little bit higher, and the Mystics' floor is a little bit lower. So I think it really comes down to defense. Both these teams have been at their best successful-wise when their defense has really stepped up. So I'm looking to people, who are going to come off the bench, who are going to be that spark plug. To me, I was shocked when LA won the finals without really going into their bench. And I said this many times, it's going to come down to which of these teams. The finals, to me, does not come down to the starting 5 because I think we know what they're going to do. We're going to see a lot of greatness from them. It comes down to 1 or 2 players off the bench who can truly be that it factor. And I'm looking at Kayla Mose-Lewis. I'm looking at Jordan Canada, maybe a little bit Noelle Quinn, Sammy Wickham. Maybe she'll step up. But then on DC's side, it's interesting. You got Tiana Hawkins, who has had her moments this season. You got Maisha Hines-Allen, who, someone, I'm going to talk to the people at Breaking Tea. Someone needs to make a T-shirt of her called The Bully because she's just a bully. She just knocks people around and has no regard for anybody who's not on her team. That's someone who they need to lock down for a long-term contract, in my opinion. And then you got Monique Curry and Aerial Powers. It's a really, really interesting bench play, and I think that's what it's going to come down to. And I don't know who has the advantage. I know you kind of think Mystics might there, but talk to me, Rachel. Break it down. Who do you think is going to be that it player off the bench?
Well, I'm going to disagree with you in terms of a consistent effort in terms of winning a championship. I do think that, like you said, each game has its own storyline in terms of different players that step up. One game, it might be Ariel Atkins that really hits the headline. It might be Jordan Canada. It might be someone else that comes in and kind of excels beyond their traditional role. But you know what? Finals and championships come down to your best players making plays. The teams that make the right plays as a collective unit, as a whole, who've been making plays all year long are the ones that are going to win that game. So, or that series. So, it's tough. Because I think it's completely, it's hard to predict. But in terms of your it player, I'm not going to sound like I'm reinventing the wheel here, but for Washington, it's Elena Delle Donne. She's got to be able to be the best player on the floor. She's got to be able to elevate, throw this team on her back, and do what Delle Donne does. And for Seattle, at this point right now, I kind of go back and forth, but it's got to be Brianna Stewart. She's got to be calm and steady and do what she does, which she will. We know she will, putting up big time numbers. But beyond that, the obvious, I think for Seattle, Sue Bird doing what she's doing, to me, that's the X factor for Seattle, especially from what we saw the other night. She wants this thing, and they want to get it for her, and that is very evident. And so finding a way to stop that, we're not just talking about, Sue Bird versus Christy Tolliver. I don't even think those two belong in the same sentence, if you want my honest opinion. But we're talking about Sue Bird, who's a legend of the game, who...
I mean, I agree, and that's not a knock to Christy Tolliver.
No, not at all. We're just talking about Sue Bird here, so it has nothing to do with there's no one else like her in the league. There's no one else out there. It's who she is. It's what she's done, and so I just think that we're gonna continue to see greatness from Sue Bird and Brianna Stewart. Those are the two that have got to get it done for across the board, whether it's 3 games to 5 games for Washington. Honestly, I'm loving what Ariel Atkins is bringing to the table. It's hard to put that much on a rookie, but she was that X factor, especially, a few of those games in that Atlanta series, how steady she was, and the toughness plays that she came up with, and at pivotal moments, things that don't always necessarily show up in the stat sheet. When Ariel Atkins is doing that, they're really hard to beat, and she makes everybody around her better in terms of offensive rebounds or assists and getting the ball where it needs to go, taking charges and making big-time plays. If she can find a way to keep that going the way she played, especially in Game 5 of that last series, this is going to be a lot of fun. I'm just telling you that right now.
Well, what I'm going to even add to that, put a little cherry on the top, is DC struggled because when Deladon went down, a lot of pressure was put on Natasha Cloud. And I'll be honest, I'm one of her biggest hype people. In Game 4, she didn't show up. In Game 3, she didn't show up. And in Game 4, she also struggled. And that was part of an issue that caused them to throw Powers in a little bit more. And it kind of I'll be honest, I think a lot of times people were looking around like, what are we going to do? Natasha's not getting it done. And Atkins kind of stepped up and was like, why is everybody looking around? And started to make those same plays and obviously in her own Atkins style way, but she was doing the plays that typically I find so valuable from Natasha Cloud. So for me, what that does for Mystics moving forward into this final series of the season is it gives them an opportunity to say, hey, we have somebody who, when one of us is struggling, one of our key components is struggling, Atkins can step up. And I just think it's a huge motivator for any team to be in a dogfight and be able to look up and see a rookie performing so well, and these vets to go, well, hell, if this rookie's doing it, I got to get my stuff together.
What's interesting about these two teams, and I think is going to be fun to see, is their ability to play beyond the arc. It's obviously well known for people who have watched both these teams, but for those who don't, we're looking at two teams that they rely heavily on their 3-point shot. Okay, so Seattle led the league. Little over 31% of their points come from beyond the arc on average, and just right behind that was Seattle at 29.8. So you're seeing both teams that rely on that shot, especially Washington. They want to shoot as many as they can get up within rhythm, and that makes sense within their offense. So that'll be a part of the game that's going to be fun. One difference in between these two teams, though, is going to be the pace in which they play. Seattle, they want to get out and run. They want to push it in transition between Canada. They get a ton of points when it comes to just pushing the ball as fast as they can. I think they led the league when it came to transition points this year, at least in the regular season. So they play a little bit faster than Washington does in terms of just possessions. But Washington has shown moments too where they'll get it down the floor and they'll take a quick shot within the possession. So we could see some games here that are really high scoring, going to be a lot of fun to watch. This is going to be an exciting finals when it comes down to it. But as one thing we did kind of talk about was just the bench scoring, just breaking that down a little bit more. The fact that Washington can go a little bit deeper into their bench. Seattle does kind of primarily rely on that starting 5. But again, you never know who's it going to be any given night. Players have got to step up. Players have got to make a difference. But you mentioned it earlier in this podcast, the fact that, just being able to defend. Who can get stops? Again, defense wins championships. You hear the cliches, but it's true. Being able to remain poised, to come up with consistent stops back to back. Basketball is a game of runs. Both teams are going to go on runs. You're going to see Seattle go on a ton of runs. You're going to see Washington go on a ton of runs. Whatever team can handle the other one the best, remain poised, come up with 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4 consistent stops in a row, where you get a stop and then you come down and you're poised and you're able to capitalize on it, taking care of the basketball, get yourself a good shot. This is a game of possessions, and it's a game of runs. So it's just going to be a lot of fun from that standpoint, but it all comes down to stops. Coming up with stops, remaining poised, and coming up with consistent stops. So we both know that, we all know that the teams are extremely well-versed in the offensive side of things. That's going to be a ton of fun to watch, but pay attention to just the defensive end of the floor, how teams are playing, and how well they're doing in terms of getting consistent stops.
Yeah, something I want to add to that, because I think you kind of nailed it perfectly, is my concerns, my personal concerns. DC, when their back was against the wall, when Atlanta, EDD's out, Atlanta's full force, it's a close game, but Atlanta had a couple big shots and whatnot. It really, to me, it showed a lot how DC did not give up. They were down on themselves, but as they said in the post game, and as we saw many times, they left it all on the court. Seattle, in some of those games, there was times where, and obviously you're not going to have that same experience where Diana Taurasi's just stabbing you in the back every 5 seconds, but, there's something to be said of, there was times where Seattle just looked not exhausted physically, but emotionally. And I started to lack, and now this question just keeps nagging in my head. Do they have the fire of a champion? Do they have it when it's the fourth quarter and all of a sudden DC's able to string together 4 stops and they're down 9 points with 2 minutes left? Do they have that extra gear? That's really the questions in my mind. So I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to delay any longer because we've already delayed like 20 odd minutes. Rachel, it's time for prediction. I feel like during the playoffs, our podcasts were literally just us delaying as long as we could until we finally had to make predictions.
Time to make predictions. Okay, predictions for game 1. I'm going to go with Seattle. They're going to win 91. No, I take that back. I'm sorry. 81-75.
81-75. See, this is tough. Something we didn't talk about, and I just want to bring up real quick, and this is going to play a lot into my decision. I think DC is somehow going to pull up an upset in game 1, 91-89. Real close game. And the only reason I think that is Coach T has expressed many times this playoffs how important, and this is even like unprompted, how important and how big a deal it is for you to be able to go into when you're not the hosting team for the first 2 games, to go in and pull off that victory. And also, side note, still really pissed off, really upset about where the Mystics are playing for the WNBA finals. They're playing all the way out in middle of nowhere, Virginia, which is definitely going to affect their home court advantage. So I think this team is going to realize that. They're going to come out guns blazing game 1, try and steal that victory. I got to make a prediction for the series, and I think Seattle wins the series. But I think DC takes game 1. Rachel, you kind of shied away from a series prediction. Now's the time to make it so we can't go back because we both know we're going to be flip-flopping during the series. So
I've got Seattle.
Quick.
I've got Seattle winning it all. But I will say Washington has got to find a way to steal one of these at Seattle in order to give themselves a chance.
I'll agree with that. I'll say if Washington can pull off one of those, if Washington wins, it's in 4. Seattle, I could see 3 or 5. But if it goes to 5, I don't have faith in Washington. And if Washington can't pull off a win in Seattle, I don't see them going back to Seattle.
I'm with you.
Yeah. All right. Well, well, we agree. Hey, Foghorn for that. This has been the WNBA Insider Show previewing the WNBA 2018 Finals. Seattle is taking on Washington for an epic battle. Make sure to tune in on all the different ESPN and ABCs.